Has anyone ever attempted the 13th floor ritual? I've always been drawn to the darker corners of the internet, not the dark web, but obscure sites and forgotten blogs with barely any visitors. That's how I stumbled upon the ritual in the first place. It was just a post on some nearly abandoned forum, yet it promised an experience unlike anything imaginable. A glimpse into a world that defied logic, along with a promise of good fortune for anyone who completed the steps correctly. I archived the post, and although I won't link it here, this is how it read. Greetings, below are the instructions for performing the 13th floor ritual. They say that if you follow the steps correctly, you'll be rewarded with good fortune, but not without a price. Some claim they've glimpsed the other side, while others have disappeared without a trace. If you're brave enough to attempt it, hear what you must do. Step 1. Find a building with at least 13 floors. It must have an elevator that can access every floor without restrictions. Step 2. Begin the ritual at 1:00 a.m., 1 hour past midnight, often called the true 13th hour. Step 3. Enter the elevator alone. If anyone else steps in, you must wait and start over. Step 4. Press the buttons in ascending order from 1 through 13, stopping at each floor. Do not continue if the elevator stops on any floor you didn't select. Step 5. When you reach the 13th floor, the doors will open to a hallway that does not exist in our world. You may see distant figures. Do not acknowledge them and do not show fear. Step 6. Leave an object of personal significance in the hallway. The greater its importance to you, the greater the fortune you may receive. This is your offering. Step 7. Return to the elevator without turning around for any reason. Press the button for the first floor. If the elevator begins moving upward instead, press any other button to interrupt it, then exit the building immediately. Step 8. Once you reach the first floor, leave the building without looking back. Never return. If you've completed all steps, congratulations, your good fortune will soon begin. You can thank me later. Regards, M. After reading this, I called my buddy. Let's call him Steve for anonymity. We've known each other forever, and trying ridiculous internet rituals has been our shared hobby since middle school. Naturally, nothing we tried ever worked, which is why it wasn't surprising when Steve initially refused. "No, man, I don't think so," he said. "Kristen's mom is visiting from Vermont this weekend, and I promised I'd help move some furniture. Besides, the post says only one person is allowed in the elevator, and nothing ever happens anyway." "Of course nothing happens," I laughed. "But that's not the point, it's about the experience. And come on, I'm not going into some old building alone at night. You can just take the stairs and meet me at each floor." "I don't know, man, furniture doesn't move itself." "Steve, you just don't want Kristen's mom to find out about your little hobby. That's what this is really about." He sighed. I could hear the hesitation. I knew I had him. "Come on, dude, we're heading off to college this fall. We need at least one last adventure. Kristen's turning you into a scaredy cat." There was a long silence before he finally gave in. "Fine, but if we get caught, I'm telling the cops you're holding me hostage." "Deal," I said, grinning. "I'll swing by at 11. It took us longer than expected to find a building tall enough, old enough, and abandoned enough for the ritual. By the time we agreed on a location, it was already 12:40 a.m. After a bit of arguing, we settled on the Markham building, an 18-story Art Deco structure from the 1930s. Only the first floor was in use, serving as an insurance office in the mornings, though I'm not totally sure. The upper floors hadn't been leased since the 90s. We parked several blocks away to avoid drawing attention. The streets were eerily quiet, and the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. As we approached the building, I couldn't shake a growing sense of foreboding. The Markham building towered above us, once, I imagined, one of the tallest and most impressive structures in the area. Now it was scarred by decades of neglect and decay. Steve and I expected getting inside to be a challenge, especially since the first floor was still partially in use, but that had never stopped us before. Granted, this was definitely the largest building we'd ever tried to sneak into. Through the glass entrance doors, we could see that the lobby lights were still on, suggesting someone might actually be inside. I pushed the door gently, and to our surprise, it swung open without resistance. Steve and I exchanged a look that was equal parts excitement and unease. He slipped his lockpicking tools back into his pocket. Apparently, we wouldn't need them tonight. We were a bit worried about cameras, but since the door hadn't been locked, we figured we at least wouldn't be charged with breaking and entering. Instead, our new concern was running into an employee who might ask uncomfortable questions. We moved quietly through the entrance, past the empty reception desk, and into the main lobby. It wasn't exactly impressive, dingy, outdated, and seemingly untouched since the mid-80s, when the building had last been renovated. The one thing that did stand out, though, was the sleek, shiny silver elevator on the far side of the room. It looked practically brand new. "Why is it so new?" Steve asked, holding up the flashlight I'd given him even though it wasn't needed. "No idea," I shrugged. "Maybe Wikipedia was wrong and the place actually got a renovation recently. Hell, maybe the upper floors aren't abandoned after all." Steve didn't answer, but the unease on his face was obvious. The ritual instructions were clear. At 1 hour past midnight, I had to enter the elevator alone, visit the floors in order, and never look back once I reached the 13th floor. "Remember, you need to take the stairs and meet me at each floor," I reminded him. Yeah, I know," he muttered, rolling his eyes. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. As the doors slid shut, I heard Steve's footsteps heading toward the stairwell. The elevator began its ascent, and with it grew the uneasy feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. I kept glancing at the mirrored wall, half expecting to see a shadow behind me, but all I saw was my own pale reflection. When the doors opened on the first floor, Steve was already waiting. "Everything okay?" he asked, sounding a little concerned. "Yeah," I admitted, "just feels a bit creepy in there." We continued following the ritual sequence. Each time the elevator arrived at a floor, Steve was always ahead of me, thanks to the extra 20 seconds it took for the elevator doors to open and close. I was careful not to step out, and he never stepped in. I didn't want to risk messing up the ritual and starting over. Floor by floor, we worked our way upward until I reached the 12th floor. The doors slid open, and for the first time, Steve wasn't there. Instead, I was greeted by a dark, empty office hallway. I didn't want to admit it, but fear crept in fast. "Steve," I called quietly. The moment I spoke, that sensation of being watched tightened around me. My heartbeat pounded so loudly in my ears that for a moment I couldn't hear anything else. Then finally, I exhaled in relief as the faint echo of Steve's footsteps drifted up the stairwell. He must have already started heading toward the 13th floor. I swallowed hard and pressed the button for floor 13. The doors closed with a soft thud, and despite knowing deep down this ritual was probably just some prank by an internet troll, a cold shiver ran across my spine. The ascent felt slower, almost as if the elevator didn't want to reach its destination. When the doors finally opened, I was met with complete darkness. Sure, the other floors had been dark too, but at least there had always been a little light filtering in through the large windows. Here, there was nothing. My heart pounded as I quickly flicked on my flashlight, bracing myself for whatever lay ahead. Even though fear clawed at me, part of me felt an odd disappointment when the beam revealed nothing more than a perfectly ordinary hallway, ordinary for an abandoned building, anyway. Faded wallpaper hung in peeling strips, and the worn-out carpet looked like it belonged in a decades-old office. A pile of desk chairs sat stacked haphazardly in one corner, and a trash bin overflowed with crumpled papers. Other than that, the hallway was empty, quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the elevator behind me. I stepped out, my heartbeat gradually settling, and scanned the hallway again, expecting Steve to be waiting, but he wasn't there. I took a few cautious steps forward, my flashlight sweeping across the silent corridor. The air felt heavy, thick with the unmistakable sense that something unseen was watching me. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my grandfather's old watch. He'd given it to me for my birthday, just 3 days before he was killed in a car accident. I'd brought it as my offering, hoping its emotional weight would satisfy whatever force supposedly granted good fortune. I set the watch gently on the floor beside the trash bin. "I'll come back for it next weekend," I told myself, though I wasn't sure I believed that. When I turned toward the elevator, I froze. It was gone. I know how insane that sounds, and trust me, that's exactly how I felt, but the elevator was simply gone. In its place stood a blank wall, smooth and seamless, as though the elevator had never existed at all. Panic surged through me. I spun around, searching desperately for any sign of an exit. The hallway stretched on endlessly in both directions, devoid of windows or doors. "Steve," I called, my voice echoing unnervingly in the empty corridor. A cold sweat trickled down my forehead. "Steve," I shouted louder. Still nothing. My mind raced. None of this could be real. It didn't make sense. I forced myself to take a long, shaky breath. I needed to stay calm, think logically. If the elevator was gone, then I had to find another way out, which meant exploring the rest of the 13th floor, whether I wanted to or not. My flashlight was the only source of light as I continued down the hallway. With every step, the air grew colder, and the crushing silence felt almost hostile, like it was pressing in on me. I called for Steve again. Only my own voice answered. Dread settled deep in my chest. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The further I went, the more the hallway began to change. The faded wallpaper gave way to cracked plaster. The carpet disintegrated beneath my feet, leaving behind a trail of dust. The neatly stacked chairs were now scattered across the floor, as though thrown by some unseen force. And then I saw them. Figures, at first just blurry silhouettes at the edge of my flashlight's reach. But as I approached, they took shape tall, impossibly thin, and unnervingly still. I remembered the warning from the post: do not interact with them, do not show fear. But how was I supposed to feel anything but fear? They were like nothing I had ever seen, their presence triggering a primal terror I didn't even know I was capable of. Then I heard it. A cry, desperate, pleading. Help me. It was unmistakable, coming from somewhere beyond the figures. Without thinking, I ran toward the sound. I knew I was breaking the ritual's rules, but it didn't matter. Steve was my friend. As I rushed toward the figures, they turned to face me. Their eye sockets were empty, dark voids. Their mouths hung open unnaturally wide, silent, toothless screams. I reached out to them, begging for help. I still don't know why I did that. Looking back, it was beyond stupid. But I was terrified, half in shock, and desperate to find Steve. They didn't respond, they just stared. Steve's cries grew weaker and weaker until they faded completely. And then there was only me, alone and surrounded. A sudden sharp pain shot through my side. I realized I'd somehow injured myself, though I had no idea how. It felt like the aftermath of a fall, even though I knew I hadn't fallen. I collapsed to the floor, clutching my side as agony pulsed through me. The figures stood motionless, silently watching. My heartbeat throbbed painfully in my ears, but somehow I managed to force myself back onto my feet despite the searing pain. I had to get to the elevator. I had to get out of this nightmare. I stumbled back the way I'd come. The figures did not try to stop me. They actually shifted aside, almost politely, to let me pass. When I reached the place where the elevator should have been, my breath caught. It was there, as if it had never vanished at all. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the button for the first floor and collapsed inside as the doors slid shut, slumping against the wall with what little strength I had left. Then the elevator began to rise. Panic surged through me. This wasn't right. The building only had 18 floors, yet the display already showed we were past floor 30 and still climbing, faster and faster. I struggled upright, vision swimming, and reached for the panel. My fingers fumbled, barely obeying me, but I managed to press another button. I think it was the first floor. I could hardly see. The elevator jolted violently, then began descending. When it finally stopped, I braced myself for anything. The doors opened, and I found myself back on the first floor. Everything looked as it had before, except the lights were now off. Gasping for air, I crawled out of the elevator, every muscle screaming. I needed to get outside, find help, but I wasn't sure I could even walk. Somehow, I pushed open the glass doors. By sheer luck, a passing car saw me. A stranger ran over, their voice echoing distantly as they called for help. I woke the next morning in a hospital room. Sunlight streaming across the white walls was a welcome change after the Markham building's suffocating darkness. When I sat up, a sharp pain sparked in my side. For a moment, everything that happened felt hazy, like a fever dream. Maybe I'd gotten into a car accident. Maybe none of it was real. Then I saw it. My grandfather's watch, sitting on the bedside table. Its hands were frozen at 1:00. The true 13th hour. My stomach dropped. If the watch was real, then everything else might be too. And Steve, what had happened to Steve? Desperate for answers, I went back to the forum where I'd first found the ritual. I posted everything I could remember, hoping someone, anyone, would know what to do. Most replies were just skepticism or concern. But one message stood out. It was from a user named M, the same person who'd posted the ritual. Congratulations, the message read. You've seen the other side. But remember, good fortune comes with a price. The figures you saw are now aware of you, and they will not rest until they get what they want. Be careful. And whatever you do, do not perform the ritual again. Cold dread settled in my chest. I realized with a sickening clarity that Steve must have been the object of importance I'd left behind on the 13th floor. I had meant to leave my grandfather's watch, but somehow I left Steve instead. So here I am now. I don't expect anyone to believe me. Hell, I'm not even sure I believe it myself. I've tried calling Steve dozens of times. Nothing. His girlfriend keeps texting me, asking where he is. I don't know how to tell her the truth. What I do know is that I have to go back. I have to perform the ritual again. I can't leave Steve there. I dragged him into this mess. I'm the one who has to get him out. The doctors say I need to stay at least one night for observation, but I can't wait. As soon as it hits 11:00 tonight, I'm sneaking out. That gives me just enough time to reach the Markham building before 1. I know this forum is meant for stories that keep people awake at night, but if anyone has real advice, anything that could help, please tell me. I only have 13 hours left before I have to go.